Hello again, everyone. I realized it had been a while since I went through my storage solution for collage materials. Basically, pieces of paper that I want to use for collage at some point. So at one point, quite a while ago now, I did go through what was then only my one tray of stuff for that. And I'll see if I can find that video and link it down below. But since then, I have come up with a little bit of a better system. So this is just one of several that I'm going to be showing you, and I've color coded my system. So it's easier for me to find things that I need in a particular color. So these little plastic bins are from Amazon. I'll see if I can find these as well and put a link down below. There's a whole set of them, and I'll show you the others because I'm going to go through them one by one. I couldn't stack them up on my desk because it would take up too much space. So I've color coded them by the color, or roughly by the color of the plastic bin. And these are pretty shallow, and then I end up stacking them. Actually, I'll get one other and show you how I stack them. And then they all just, all stack up like that. And one thing that I noticed pretty early on is that if I just left loose papers like this, when I stacked them, these papers would stick to the bottom of the plastic container on top of it. So to deal with that issue and to sort of separate larger pieces from smaller pieces, I also got these little zippered bags. So these zippered bags are for the most part, because it's not perfect as far as color coding, these match the bin and then they contain larger papers, and then the bin contains smaller papers, although that that sometimes, like, I just put a bunch of stuff in these bins, and sometimes I'll need to go through, and like this is a little bit of a larger piece of paper, so I probably would put that in here at some point, but I won't put you through that sorting, but but that's the system that I have. So I'm just going to kind of show you the type of papers that I have in each of these bins. So down here, like I said, this is in theory the smaller papers, and this is for things that fall into what I call the red category, given the red bin. So I have things like translucent papers with stenciling on them. This was a cutout that I did of some writing over the top of gouache. This is a jelly print sort of experiment with different colors. More jelly printing. This is just, splotching paint on top of little pieces of paper. So I save pretty much every little bit of paper. And these were actually little flowers or something that I made for a class. And then once they're cut out, I just put them in here. And let's see what else we have in here. Yeah, a lot of it is jelly prints. A lot of it is painted papers. I do have a little bit of fabric here and there. I don't have a lot of fabric, but like this was a fabric that I put little magenta dots on that you can barely see in this context because it's cheesecloth. So things like that. I try to put the papers that are pre-made papers into a separate storage area. So for the most part, these are papers that I made in some way, but there are things like this that end up in there, mostly because I don't know where to put them. So sometimes those things will end up in there, but for the most part, these are papers that I made. But you can see some other things slid in there. And then in the bags, I have the larger bits of paper. And again, it ranges from tissue paper to book pages to just regular paper. This has some tissue paper in it. This has some things that I did mark making on, some jelly prints. So a lot of it's going to be the same as we go through the colors, but and sometimes I have to make a judgment call as to which color I want to put things with, because sometimes they'll be multicolor, and I actually don't have a multicolor basket for some reason. But we're moving on to white. And again, I'm a little bit liberal with that idea. And, you know, sometimes there's different colors. The white is actually the one that has the least things that are made by me. A lot of these are little bits of paper that I cut off of other things, and then I will use these for various purposes. Sometimes I'll do some mark making on these little scraps or something like that. So it's good to have them available and for me to know where they are. I also have some, you know, second or third generation stamps in here. And every so often I will go through and cull these. Uh-oh, I don't know what that was. Those are my glasses. Let me grab those before I run over them. So every now and then I will go through these and cull them down. It's very hard for me to part with papers for some reason. But I do try to every so often go through. Oh, and this one does actually have some magazine pages and things like that. But these are printouts on printer paper with a laser printer. So these I could use for image transfers. So that's also what I keep in my white one. And as you can see, I didn't have a white one, so I used this light blue for that. And this works so much better than just the one bin. Well, first off, because I've accumulated a lot more collage materials since then, but this makes it much easier because I will sometimes pick sort of a color family to do a piece in, and then I can just go through here and pick out some things that I think I might like. The one thing that's in here, so this is sort of the neutral papers that aren't exactly white. I do have a lot of these. But this was the closest to a neutral color, so that's what I did. And then here I actually have some skeleton leaves that I ordered, and these I think are no longer available anywhere. I haven't been able to find them. They're really cool, and really cool to use, but you know, they're becoming hard to find for whatever reason. And then in here again we have the larger papers. I even have some full sheets of paper. Like this was just me trying to use paint that I was using for a different project and put it on a different paper for that. There is some watercolor paper in here. Watercolor paper I do try to keep separate because it is pretty thick, and it's certainly not the best for collaging, but sometimes it works for accents or something that you want to put on a collage piece if it's like one of the final elements. Okay, and here we have orange, and orange is a color that I don't necessarily have a lot of pieces. I do like orange, but it's kind of interesting that I tend to not gravitate towards that color as sort of a natural color, but I've been trying to expand. So all of these are little mark making exercises on tissue paper, for example. And there are some of my Dyed and Gone to Heaven papers, which are some of my most precious papers. This I dyed over the top of something else, but so it's not really super special, but those are the papers that I tend to use all of, like absolutely all of, when I have them. And for those of you that don't know what I'm referencing, Dyed and Gone to Heaven is a class by Liz Constable, and she also taught a class in Fodder School, so you can, if you're interested, you can take a look at that. And her method was sort of like revolutionary to me, and I now am planning to use it everywhere. So in theory, this is really actually orange and yellow seems to be a color I really don't use that often. So it's few and far between in here. And these were some tissue papers that I sandwiched together with little patterns in between. That was kind of fun. So next we have the blue, which I definitely have the most of. And this is the one that fills up pretty quick, but I do tend to go to it a lot, so they do get used. But and sometimes, you know, like this, I think probably could have gone in green or blue because it's kind of a tealy color, but again, it's always a judgment call. And this, like the tissue paper is slightly blue, so I put that in here. Again, some more mark making on tissue paper. And these are just sort of offcuts of different papers, and basically anything that has any kind of mark on it, I will keep. And it sometimes gets a little bit out of control. And these are painted tissue papers again, painted coffee filters, that sort of thing. This one's pretty big. I probably should put that in the folder. But like I said, I did just recently add some more stuff to these as I cleared through some more Died and Gone to Heaven papers. Yeah, but just little scraps and all kinds of stuff like that. But this has been such a useful thing, and this is chock full. This has all kinds of things. And this was, again, coffee filters where I wiped brushes off on them when I was painting. And more jelly prints, lots of jelly prints. Probably because when you start jelly printing, again, jelly print, you make a lot. For those of you that are not jelly printers, you may not be familiar, but it's definitely a bit of an obsession. Here's just some cut paper. And I probably should start putting a bit of a timeline on some of these things. So if I don't use them within a certain time frame, I probably should get rid of them. But some papers are so precious that I really don't want to do that with. And this is probably actually due for a bit of a purge. Yes, that one has to be stacked carefully because it's pretty full. And green also seems to be one that I have a lot of papers in, even though I didn't really think that I used a lot of paper. So obviously these are some bits that I cut circles out of and that sort of thing. And these are more mark making exercises. This was once a printout that I did some printing of some kind on, little tiny scraps. Like this little tiny scrap though is a scrap that I super like. I love the colors. And then we have things like, you know, just put a bunch of stuff on paper. And this is actually a Citrusolve. And so with National Geographic, you can put Citrusolve on them and it'll essentially dissolve the photos in the National Geographic. And I only did this once, and it was really kind of a disaster as far as, like, first off, I didn't have very colorful National Geographics, and also the ones that the way I did it just made it so that the National Geographic ink just all blended together and was kind of a disaster as far as becoming just a big, mostly green mess. And again, like all of these little bits and pieces are really going to be useful for collage. And here I have some just sort of a gauzy like fabric in here. And again, with every one of these, there's lots and lots of jelly prints. And here I just have some little samples of green paper that I got. All those rice papers and handmade papers are pretty cool to have. Okay, I only have 2 left. And you can definitely tell which colors are my go-tos, because I would certainly say the blue and the pink have the most scraps. And this is actually not something I made. This came in a little package that I bought from someone, and I just thought it was so cute. This little tiny assemblage that I figured I would put it somewhere eventually. Although, so I do have a bit of a thing with other people's art. Like this kind of thing, I might just put in a planner or something where, you know, I kind of document the fact that I got this. I'm not going to put it in a piece of art. I generally try to stick with only papers that I've made or, you know, mass market papers in my work. I try not to use anything that anyone else has done. That way, you know that everything in there is something that came from me, basically. But yeah, so these are all the pink papers, lots of them. Lots of fun tissue paper. Some little bits of stamped paper are in here too. Some paper that I doodled on. More jelly prints. So this is pink and purple, essentially, which is why my little bag is purple. Oh, and you can see, so that happens sometimes. Things stick to the bag because it is plastic. And just a really broad variety. And it just seems like every time I do anything, I make a lot of it. So I really do need to focus more on using some of the stuff, which I have been doing. And I've been trying not to go overboard with making new things before using others. All right, and this is the last one, which is black. And, you know, there's some black and white things in here. Again, some mark making on tissue, mark making on paper, some envelope insides, little doodles, and this was some ink on paper. It's actually a pretty nice little scrap there. That was from the same thing, I think. And these were scraps of paper that I decided to stamp. I don't know if I'll use those, actually. I mean, they're cool and all, but who knows? Who knows if I'll use those ever? Some more envelopes, security envelopes. And then some more mark making. And then in here, so tissue paper, mark making papers. This was one of the stamps that I carved, printed on black paper, and just all kinds of things. And you know, for collage, like this sort of thing is really great because you can tear it up and sort of incorporate it into a larger collage, and it really does add some interest. Here is a photo that I altered that I took in Iceland. It's one of my all-time favorite photos, and I've used it in my art a bit. There's some wrapping paper in here too, I think. And then, you know, just various things, some more doodling on paper. And I do have some tissue papers in here. These are actually, well, they're from Ranger, these tissue papers, which are really cool, which have birds and stuff on them. I've actually really liked those. But that's it. So basically, they all stack up together. They take up a lot less space than, you know, having things in a different drawer or anything. And if they get over full, I really do need to go through and weed things out. In fact, after this video, I'm probably going to do that. It's been a little while since I've done that. And even though I am super intense about keeping most things, at some point, you know, you just have to acknowledge that there's some things you're never going to use. All right, well, that's my, is that dog fur? Or is that actually, I don't think that is dog fur, actually. I think that is some of the string on one of these. Dog fur usually does show up everywhere too. But that's how I organize my collage papers. If you have any questions about this system, please let me know. I'll try to find links to the bins and the zipper bags. I bought them both from Amazon and they were pretty inexpensive. And I think these bins were originally like school bins to organize papers or something. But anyway, that's all I had for you today. Feel free to subscribe to keep track of future videos on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. I hope to see you next time, but in the meantime, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.